Let's start with an incredible story that actually took place here in Flatbush several years, let's call it about 10 years ago. There was a family, very well-to-do, Greenfield. The names have been changed. And they, from their perspective, wanted the, quote, perfect match. So Surely was a well-to-do man who had a very successful medical supply business, and his wife Ariella had a beautiful home in Flatbush, tastefully decorated. And as the offers came in for their daughter, Shiri, they were rejected. This family didn't have enough yichus, this one didn't have enough money, this one didn't live in the right zip code, whatever it was. Once in a while, something would come in. Kazenstein, no, I know that name. Wasn't he with me in BMG? But I think he lost his money in the 1990s and never got it back. There was always something going on to reject. Sometimes he would like the shidduch very much, the father of the girl, but Ariella, the wife, said, nah, I remember the mother from camp, not our style. Or I don't like the sisters, something else. Until one day, we're going to change the name as well. A very famous shadchan called up, let's call him Chuni for argument's sake. And the wife, Ariella, was in the middle of doing her required amount of tehillim, which she did every day, in order to facilitate the shidduch for her daughter. So she didn't answer the call, but she went on a voicemail, and she was like almost in shock that he called them. So she called back. He says, my name is Chuni. Yes, Rav Chuni, I know you're the famous shadchan. How can I help you? Well, I've got the perfect match for your Shiri. Is your husband around? I would like to speak to him. No, actually, he's in shul right now learning. But can I hear about the match? Nothing for you to hear about. It's already done. Don't worry. It's done already. So who is it? He says, Baruch Gordon. The famous Gordons? Little backdrop. Benny Gordon, the father, was a lawyer who had been very matzliach, very successful. And to the point where he ended up starting his own law firm. He had 200 lawyers, all billing $500 an hour. You can do the math. Doing extremely well. This was a family that everyone would have died to marry into. And they had the best mechutanim, and the best, most beautiful, elaborate affairs. So she nearly dropped when he told her this information. And so when her husband came home, she said, I have some news to tell you. He brought home some Danishes. It was Sunday morning. And they're sitting there after breakfast. He says, I have news to tell you. Chuni, the famous shadchan, called me. And he said, what? About Shiri? Yeah. And he says, I should call him back. I should call him right now. No. Don't make it seem like we're so, desirous of this. Wait a couple hours. And we'll call him back. So they called him back. And the shidduch was proposed, and obviously they said yes, because the Gordons was the family in town. Everyone wanted to marry into them. And then Shiri went out with him, one date, 2 dates. On the 3rd date, there was a question, but they sort of settled it. On the 7th date, she got the answer, because when he came over and her nieces and nephews were around, she was very happy how he was affectionate with the kids. And it was really, to her, that sealed the deal. And then they went on to the most magnificent wedding. The presents and jewelry that were given were exquisite. Sheva brachas were done by the most wealthy people in New York. No money was spared over here. And then the deal was, or the plan was, that they were now going to head off to Eretz Yisrael, where he was going to learn in the Mir. And it was set up in a very comfortable apartment in Ramat Eshkol, with Baruch going to yeshiva, and Shiri taking courses online with Turo. One night, a phone call came in, and she picked it up, and it was his mother. And he was in shock. And she tells him, Tati and I are getting divorced. Wow, that hit the world with shock. Not just in Israel, but this was a man who was a philanthropist that had his name on many Beis Yaakovs and many Torah institutions. And now this famous family was becoming fractured like this. Meanwhile, Yisrael and his wife, Ariella, are wondering, look at this. We strove so hard to get the quote perfect family, and look at this, it hit us right back in the face. Because we were only focused on one thing, social status. Look how badly we blew it. Now we have a mechutanim are divorced. We could have done so much better. We said no to so many other capable guys with good families. Okay, it's Ben Azmanim, and in the middle of the summer, and Saul and his wife Ariella up in their home in the Catskills, and getting ready to do the barbecues and enjoying. Baruch and his wife are flying in from Eretz Yisrael, and they're going to come up later that night. And they come up, and so the father-in-law puts his hand on the son-in-law and he says, how are you doing? What's doing? And he says, times are hard for me. I'm processing all what happened with my parents. And then he starts to cry. He just breaks down and he starts to cry. He says, I have something that I have to tell you. 5 years ago, my father left the house for 2 weeks and he wasn't around. So I didn't really pay attention to what was going on until it happened 2 years later. I picked up the phone call to call one of my chavrusas. We should learn together. And I heard my mother talking to my grandmother, her mother. What do you think is going to happen? Is he going to come back? We're not sure. So now he suspected something's going on. His mother came home. She left the house and came home visibly shaken with very red, swollen eyes. So he saw his older sister, and she had been in her mother's room for a while. He says, what happened? Mommy and Tati got a divorce. They got divorced 3 years ago. So listen to what happened. So she says, but when they got married, they were married. Yes, they got remarried just for us. Just for us. And once we got married, they got divorced again. Isn't that amazing? Wow. Huh? So there's so much demionot, so much demionot is going on today in Shidduchim. There's so much good. There's so much good, but you have to be careful. And today, I'm going to share with some of you, with you, some of the things that I'm seeing regularly, and what you need to, be on the lookout for. Let's ask the first question: why do we get married? It's obviously the first mitzvah in the Torah is to have children, right? And that's one important. The Sefer Chinuch tells us that Piruv is the first mitzvah in the Torah, and that we have to, and that's to start a family. What a strange statement to make. The reason I have to get married is to have kids? What happened to love? What happened to romance? What happened to companionship? What happened to going to Miami, spending the winter together? But to have kids, that's why you want me to get married? So let me share an interesting story that I saw. A leading author in the field was on a flight from London to Tel Aviv. Because he booked the flight last minute, he wasn't able to put seat together himself and his wife and their 5 kids. So the kids were scattered all over the plane. And the kids would come time to time. I need some potato chips. I'd like to have pretzels. I'm thirsty. I'm hungry. Whatever. Meanwhile, he's sitting next to a guy that he never met before. And as people do on a plane, they start talking about everything under the sun, from politics to religion. Well, suddenly, the fellow who's sitting next to this man who had the 5 kids on the plane says to him, "Are these all your kids? What's it all about?" He says, "Yes." "Well, it's good to know that, because I don't have kids." He says, "You want to know why I don't have kids?" So he says to him, "Yeah, tell me why you don't want to have kids." And he told him, "My wife grew up with an abusive mother and an alcoholic father. It was a difficult life. When she and I got married, we asked ourselves the question, should we have children or should we not have children? And we decided, no, it's immoral to have kids. The world is such a horrible place. So many wars, so much suffering, COVID, pandemics, cruelty, horrible despots running the world. Why should we bring children into the world?" So my friend thought for a few minutes and gave the following brilliant answer. "You're right. The world can be a terrible place with wars, famines, much suffering. That's exactly why we want to have kids, because we want to bring kids into the world in order to make it a better place. It's true the world can be cruel, and we know humans can be savages when they want to be. But by deliberately not having kids, you're avoiding the problem. But because when we have kids, we're fixing the problem. And that's why we have kids. And that's why in Jewish thought, having a family, improving the world is one of the greatest achievements we can have. Let me run an important piece of mathematical wisdom by you. Now let's assume a small family that only has 2 children. It's not enough to propagate, but just let's say they have 2 kids. In geometric progression, the number of descendants doubles in each generation. The couple has 2 children, which means they have 4 grandchildren, which means they have 8 great-grandchildren, 16 great-great-grandchildren, and so on. After 10 generations, this couple has 1,024 descendants. After 20 generations, 1,048,000 descendants. And after 24 generations, which is a mere 600 years, they started with 2 kids. They're responsible for 16,700,000 kids. Imagine that. Now you want to know why you want to have children, why we need Jewish homes? This couple, 600 years later, if it just continue with the mathematical progression of just 2 kids, are responsible for 16,600,700,000 children. Is that good enough of a reason to have kids and to get married? The New York Times reported that Yita Schwartz, a Holocaust survivor, died at 93, left behind 15 children, 200 grandchildren, and so many great-great-grandchildren that by the count that she passed away, she had 2,000 living descendants. You like that, Hitler? 2,000. So now we see why it's important to get married. But you have to understand, dating is no slam dunk. If you have the skills and if you have the tools, you can be very matzliach at it. But just don't assume it's like a cakewalk. It's a very funny story about a wealthy woman who gave a lot of money to the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. So they invited her and they gave her an incredible reception. Head of state came to see her, the heads of the army, and they took her out. Would you like to see your money at work? I'm going to take you to a basic training course where the soldiers are going to be dealing with obstacle courses, up, down, going underneath things, really sweating it out. After watching these soldiers run the grueling obstacle course, the lady was interviewed by the Israeli TV and asked to give her impressions of what she saw. She told the TV, "What a pleasure it was to see my money going to such a wonderful cause. But you know what? After I watched the Israeli soldiers running today and exerting themselves up and down the obstacle course, I decided that I'm donating another $1 million to the IDF." Okay, interesting. So he says to her, the journalist asks her, "What motivated you to give the extra $1 million?" And she said, "While I appreciate what the soldiers are doing, I want to flatten out those bumps and hills on the course so it won't be difficult for the soldiers to run." Tipsha! This became viral all over Israel. And it was a joke. She was acting stupid. There's no such thing. There's no such thing of flattening the course in life. There's ups and downs in life, and you just need to know and get the education how to resolve it and how to deal with it. Now, number 1, toolbox. You need a great resume. A great resume. Give me a second. Just want to make sure this is on. I heard something. Perfect. Okay, girls, come in. You need a great resume. So, there are certain components to a great resume. Tonight's not the night that I can explain this to you. Reach out to me. I just helped 3 people write resumes last week. One from Mexico, flew into town. Another lady from England. Some people here. Having a great resume is critical because you never get a second chance to make a great first impression. So a resume is very important because it represents you when you're not being viewed or seen. So let's talk about that. One of the components of a resume is references. References are critical. People who know you. So I often tell people I'd like to see 4 references on there. 2 religious figures, a rabbi, rebbitzin, and 2 personal friends. Never try to avoid single people. I prefer not. And I'll tell you why. A credible story came out of Israel recently. A girl came up for Shidduchim. Every time it was getting close with the boys that she was dating, something would happen and the boys would back out. And this happened to her 6 times in a row. She was losing her mind. One day, she went out with a certain boy and she liked him. And after a while, she felt, this is the one. I'm finally going to get over the hump. And he also backed out. And he knew the Rosh Yeshiva of the boy. So he told the Rosh Yeshiva, the boy told the Rosh Yeshiva, "I really like this girl." So Rosh Yeshiva decided to call the parents of the girl and ask them the question, "You know what? David here, the boy, who's one of my students, really likes Rachel. How come you didn't give us the information about the fact that she was hospitalized for a nervous breakdown?" She says, "What? What are you talking about? Nervous breakdown?" She says, "Yeah. One of the references says she's hospitalized with a nervous breakdown." So they did their homework. On the resume was her best friend from school. And every time there was a shidduch ready to go, she would call the other side and say, don't you know Rachel had a nervous breakdown? The parents were in absolute shock. They set up a clandestine meeting with the girl, and they showed her, what did you tell people about our daughter having a nervous breakdown? She didn't know what to say. She turned white as a ghost. She had to go and bring videos to show that the dates that she said she was in the hospital, she was somewhere else. So be careful who your references are. It's very important. By the way, I'm not going to go into detail. My daughter suffered the same consequences with a classmate. And I've spoken about it. Tonight's not the night, but I've spoken about it in the previous show. Be careful. That's why avoid single people on your resume. Only married people that have a lot of an axe to grind. Now, the dating process is cloaked with mystery. Should I judge with my heart or should I judge with my head? How do we date in the Orthodox world? Well, we're going to answer that question. We date with our heads. We don't date with our hearts. Because if it's about a feeling, I'll explain to you very shortly why, you could be really misguided. We date with our heads. And not only do we date with our heads, there's a scientific way to go about doing it. We sit down, either with someone like me or a rabbi or a rabbi that knows you well, and you determine what are your top 10 needs list. These are the 10 things that you need to make you happy, that you want in a prospective spouse. Generous, kind, considerate, loyal, patient, growing spiritually, has a Rebbe. That's critical when you're a girl looking at a boy. If there's no Rebbe, beware, red flag. No one to turn to for advice. No one to turn for counsel. No one's going to tell them what to do. I had a young girl come to me from the Five Towns a few years ago who was on the verge of so-called divorce. She had married a guy who used to learn, and he came back after being in a major yeshiva in Israel, got a job. His 2 hours Seder went to an hour and a half, which went to an hour, which went to a half hour. No more praying in shul, davening in shul at all. It was b'nai bedroom. And she thought it was over. I said, does he have a Rebbe? He says, yeah, locally. I said, run to him. Tell him what's the issue. The Rebbe fixed the problem. So you gotta have a top 10 needs list. You create that top 10 needs list. You don't have to find all 10 items on the list. Chazal gave us a way. Go after the majority. 6 out of 10, you're good to go with physical attraction. If you have physical attraction and 6 out of 10 things that you have on your list, that's fine. Okay, so that's important. So what's creating the problem today? Why is it important to date with your head and not your heart? Because we have a syndrome called today TMC, too much choice. Imagine your great-grandmothers or great-great-grandfathers growing up in Poland, Russia, Persia, Syria, Morocco. It was time to get married. You went to the local shadchan, whether you were the boy or the girl. The selection was about 5 to 10 people. You didn't ask too many questions. You got married, that was it. That's not the case today. Today, dating has changed dramatically. You're not limited to 20 or so guys and girls. All you have to do is go on any website, JWed, JDate, Saw You at Sinai. That doesn't even include the WhatsApp chats out there, which is, I'm on 2 or 3 and I can't keep up with them. Thousands upon thousands of resumes to look at today. Thousands upon thousands of photos to look at today. Go to any dating site and you're just overwhelmed with the selection. So what's the problem with that? Here's the problem. A psychological experiment was done by Barry Schwartz, who's a PhD in human relations. And listen to what they did. A display was set up featuring, in a gourmet food store, Whole Foods. A display was featuring a line of high-quality jellies, jams, right? And you could taste and sample. One table had a selection of 6 jellies. One had 24. So you can imagine where the majority of people went to taste, the 24. That's not what's important. What's important, oh, by the way, 80% tasted at the 24 table, only 30% tasted at the 6 table. The most important thing is when it came to buying. 30% bought from the small table, the selection of 6. How many percent do you think bought from the table of 24? 3%. Wow. 3%, that's all. Because they were overrun with the selection. I'd rather go to the table that has a 6, limit my choices, and I'll come out with something. When you overwhelm me with too much choice, it's a problem. And that's what's going on today. When people stop me in shuls, in the street, and wherever I'm seen, what's going on today? I'll tell them, we are a party to this syndrome called TMC, too much choice. And why is that a problem? Because people are not willing to go through these struggles of dating and committing to a relationship, because who cares? I just get rid of her or him and find someone else. This past summer, Ben Zion Schaefer from the Shmooze asked me to preview his book. I think he just came out with a book, The 10 Stupidest Things Couples Can Do. Anyway, he had a profound story in there. He was having dinner in Doma in the 5 towns. And he couldn't believe he heard this story. A guy with his 2 friends, guys in their high 30s, he says to his friend, darn it, I blew it. I got married the first time too old. As a result now, I limited my selection for the second round. Built into his whole mechanism was the guarantee that he was already getting divorced. This is insane. And why is it important to use your head and not your heart? Well, forget about the Jewish mindset. Let's have a little conversation with John Gray. He's the guru who wrote Men Are From the Moon and Women Are From Venus. Right? He wrote the book. Let's hear what he has to say. This is the guy who was the psychologist to the stars in Hollywood. Physical chemistry is very short-lived. A man can easily be turned on by a woman without any strings. I was amazed as a psychiatrist or psychologist to discover a striking pattern. Quite often, women who were extremely attractive, who looked like movie stars and models, and would share the same complaint. Their husbands were not attracted to them. I was dumbfounded. I couldn't imagine why any man would not be attracted to these women, yet it was true. And I finally came to my own conclusions and determined why. When physical chemistry is not backed up by chemistry in the mind, chemistry in the heart, chemistry in the soul, it cannot grow. Once the pleasures of the body are experienced without passions of the mind and the heart and the soul, the physical attraction just goes bye-bye. If you have any doubt whatsoever, just visit your local supermarket, look at the latest National Enquirer divorce, 60 days, 90 days from Hollywood. Right? Mr. Model to Miss Model. Physical attraction can be sustained only for a lifetime when it springs from chemistry of the mind, the heart, and the soul. Leads me to my next fantastic piece. There's a woman called Gila Mandelson. She's a famous dating coach. She writes a lot. She's the world's guru on Shmiras Negiah. She was not religious growing up, but she's become the master. Hands off. This could be touching, could be dangerous, whatever. She's a master at this. And I wish I had the time to discuss more, but I want to just talk to you about her personal life. This is a woman who got a free trip to Israel, birthright, knew nothing, shows up in her jeans. And someone says, would you like to go to an Orthodox wedding? Sure, sounds cool. So they go to a wedding. Someone says, whispers in there, the guy and the girl never touched. What? You got to be kidding. This is a woman who lived a secular life on a college campus. Nah. That begins her odyssey to rediscovering her faith, and she becomes a Balas Tshuva, and to the point now where she's going to get engaged to a guy who's studying at Or Sameach. And as we know, before a person gets engaged, he takes his bride-to-be to meet the Rebbe, to get Haskama. Just like I did with my wife many years ago when I took her to Riveting Miller, it was my Rebbe. Anyway, so Avram leads me into his Rosh Yeshiva's office, a decidedly rabbinic-looking figure sitting behind a large desk. So you must be Gila, the Rosh Yeshiva says to her. And he and my soon-to-be fiancé exchanged a few words, and my soon-to-be fiancé politely exited. Still smiling, the rabbi asked me a few questions about myself. The conversation was flowing. I was confident I was making a great impression on the rabbi. And then there was a pause. The Rosh Yeshiva leaned forward in his chair, gazed at me intently and said, so Gila, you're doing so well. Please provide for me your definition of love. What's love? So she says, I wasn't prepared for that question, but I've been doing so well so far, I figured I can handle it. Listen to the answer she gives the rabbi. She, struck out. I began confidently. Love is the feeling you have when you feel that you have that feeling. Whoa, she blew it. She says, wow, I didn't know where to hide. Here I'm about to get married, but I can't even define what love is. That's ridiculous. And that set her on an odyssey to figure out what is love. And then she writes, it can't be a feeling. Physical attraction, which is a feeling, you can't base a relationship on a feeling. Why? Because if you base your relationship on a feeling, that could draw you to a lousy human being, a grown-up baby, an abuser, or someone totally wrong for you. This can't be a feeling. So I came to my own conclusion, she says, that love's got to be more importantly based on character and values. Is the person caring? Is the person loyal? Is the person patient? Is the person responsible? Is the person honest? Is he or she willing to work things out? Are they morally unshakable? And so she says, may I define love the way it was defined for me by my husband's Rosh Yeshiva. And here's what he told her. Love is the attachment that results from deeply appreciating someone else's goodness, good values, good attitudes. A husband and a wife with this kind of love don't throw in the towel when they have a challenge, when they have a fight. It's okay. Deep down, we're both good people. Maybe we had a little bit of a descent, but we can reclaim it and get it all back. And she writes a beautiful story. I once met the perfect couple, Larry and Linda. We're on the same page in virtually everything. Travel, politics, diet, the environment, you name it. I never saw two people so made for each other. And they seemed so happy together. They were enviable. Larry and Linda are now divorced. Why? They had everything together. Right? They complemented each other beautifully. Why didn't their marriage last? Despite neither Larry or Linda possessed the idea of striving to improve themselves. They never saw marriage as a spiritual path to commit to and work on. Life is just about restaurants, travel. There's no Torah. There's no values. There's no growth. If there's no self-growth, it's bound for destruction. As a result, self-centeredness took over, leaving each one more devoted to himself or herself than to the other or to their crumbling relationship. I was in Lakewood this Thursday, and I happened to have spent some time with my friend Dr. David Lieberman. I said, David, what are you seeing? I want to see if you're seeing what I'm seeing. And he goes, yeah, selfishness is the key thing today. And that's a big problem. Let's move on. Okay, as we said, we're going to maintain our toolbox mechanism here. Now, let's say you hear about someone and you want to do some research. What questions can you ask about that person? Let's say you're doing the calling or your parents are doing the calling. How long have you known him or her? Where did he or she grow up? What's the family like? What kind of relationship do they have with their family or their parents? What kind of connection did the parents have with the shul or the rabbi of the community? Where did the person attend school? What's their hashkafa and their direction for the future? What do they want to accomplish? Does he learn? And does learning mean something to him? What is his or her outlook in life? What lifestyle would they like to have? That's important. A girl called me from Belgium years ago, 3 years ago, 25 years old, freshly divorced. Married a guy from Israel. This guy really liked the high life, even though he couldn't afford it. He opened up a credit card with her name and decided, we're going away, honey, every other Shabbos. Built up a $180,000 credit card bill, divorce. He obviously had a different lifestyle expectation than her. So, what kind of lifestyle does the person expect in life? For those who care, does he smoke? Is he or she dependable? That's key. Have you seen him or her deal with emergencies? What about emotional stability? That's a good one. Very important. I'm involved in a shidduch right now. We're holding by already day 23, 24, and the mother of the girl is about to break my neck. She's all over me. Okay? Anyway, so I said to him, it's time to wrap it up. Right? Let's go. Now, I don't want anybody to force me. No, I don't want anybody to force me right now. I don't want to be forced. I said, I understand, but you're dating in the Orthodox world here. This is not college dating you want to go on forever. You're dating a frum girl. Let's get it together. The point is, he had such anxiety, we had to get him to someone for help this week. Will it happen? I'm not sure. But the point is, things have to get dealt with. There are problems. You have to check into this stuff. What is he or she looking for in a future spouse? And would you think that person would be right for me? Or my daughter, or my son? Now, again, let's keep moving. Toolbox. You must feel good about yourself in order to feel good with someone else. So, how do you feel about yourself? People can tell right away if your self-esteem is poor. If you're self-critical of yourself, if you're down on yourself, work on that. Don't go into a marriage thinking, I'm just going to throw my problem into the future. My friends, you're only going to magnify the problem. Fix it now. Very important. Build your self-esteem. Do whatever it takes, whether it's therapy, whether it's getting involved in more recreational events or social events. And that's important. Now, life partners should share the same goals. A young woman came in to see me from out of country this past week. She was a great Beis Yaakov girl for birth. She married a guy who had so-called the right yeshivas on his profile, but he was a Baal Tshuva 5 years. One day he walks up to her in Shavuot, I don't want to keep it. Turns his cell phone on. I don't understand why we have to keep this and keep that and keep this and keep that. Marriage dissolved in 90 days. Did she probe into him well enough? I don't think so. She was such in a rush to get married, she didn't realize that he wasn't stable. Today he lives with a shikta. So, let's be more careful in making sure that we have the same goals. The more different your values and beliefs are, the more challenging the marriage will be. Even two wonderful people will have difficult time creating a happy marriage if their dreams and goals differ, which is, you can have a great guy and a great girl. That doesn't mean you're automatically going to have a fantastic marriage. There's got to be compatibility, common hashkafa, common values. Can you speak? How's your communication skills? This is an area that I train tons of people in. How to communicate, what to ask. You see this? This is a PDF of 100 questions that I put together that you can ask in dating. You need it? See me after, or send me a WhatsApp or a text message and I'll send it to you. It's a PDF. Most of the problems that I see today is because people are not good at communication. They're not asking good questions. They're not asking targeted questions. When I hear this thing, like, I've gone out 9, 10 times, I'm just not feeling it. I know it results from poor questioning. They're not digging. They're not exposing their vulnerability. But you must, in order to be successful at dating. You must. Well, I don't want to share that part of my life. Tough luck. If you don't, the person will never get to know you. You've got to open a window to your soul. That's important. Okay, let's get going to the real stuff. How do I know if I'm with the right or wrong person? Many people think a good marriage partner is someone you can have fun with, go away with, enjoy romance. Nice, I don't want to take the fun away from you. It's very important, but it's not what makes the marriage. Not at all. Because the right spouse will help you and become a terrific partner in life. The wrong one will send you down a road you never wanted to travel. When looking for a life partner, what are you concerned with? A, personality. B, intelligence. You got to be compatible intellectually. Financial standing. Is he working? I have a dear student, a girl, thank God, dating very seriously now, but it took 2.5 years for me to get her a get. Financial standing, the guy sat in bed till 1 in the afternoon, every day. Didn't even get up to go to bed, to go to work. Religious values, that's important. Are they compatible? Very important. Maybe I should read it to you now. Give me a second, there's something I want to find. Here. Rabbi Lopian wrote, when he gave a share to the Bachram in Yeshiva Kfar Hasidim near Haifa, the person that you're going out with, that you want to get married to, should be somewhat near your level religiously. Not what they used to be like, and you hope that they'll return there, or not what they promise you they're going to be like. We don't marry potential. What you see is what you get. So they've got to be holding near where you're holding, where you want to be holding. That's important. Marriages can fail because people don't judge the person with objectivity. Is your attraction towards the person based on objective appraisal of their real qualities, or are you projecting virtues where there are none because you're so desperate to get married? You convince yourself that they have the qualities you want. They do not. People are closing their eyes, not willing to see what they don't want to see. If you're looking for someone cultured, don't tolerate someone who uses nivopeh all the time and cursing and bad language. If you're searching for someone spiritual, don't tolerate someone who's into money and Gucci belt shoes and all that stuff. It's okay that if a person has flaws. No one's perfect. Being cognizant of flaws doesn't mean you have to reject that person. You simply have to decide, can I live with it? And that's where you need to help today. I think there's never been a generation that could use guidance in dating like this generation. They're so confused, unfortunately, because there's so much going on today. The mind is being bombarded with media, messages, etc. Have a Rav, Rebbitzin, dating coach you can ask questions to. Don't do this alone. It can be very dangerous. Search for a friend. Someone you could talk to. Let me share an incredible story with you. There was a woman who came from Iran. Her name is Pari Zahavian. The story was like this. When they had the revolution in Iran, she and her husband sold whatever they had. He was 15 years older than her. And they came to America. They snuck through the mountains of Turkey and they finally ended up here. By the time they ended up here, he was already too old to work, so he sat around, read a little Tehillim, etc. She was successful and got herself a job as a medical assistant. Well, now he's 90 years old, and he needs an operation, which requires general anesthesia. Unbeknownst to him, his wife and his 7 kids were all fasting that day, but no one told anyone else. So the day of the surgery comes, and he's wheeled out of surgery, and he's in ICU, and he's trying to get the attention of the nurse. So the nurse comes over and he tells her, lunch. Mr. Zahavian, you just had surgery. You had anesthesia. You can't have lunch. Again, he's telling her, lunch. Again, she tells him, you know, you're not allowed to eat. You just had general anesthesia. No, you don't understand. Give my wife lunch. My wife. She says to him, what are you talking about? My wife's probably fasting. Give her lunch. So then she hits him with the $5 million question. How did you know? When you've been married for 60 years, you just know. That was the answer he gave. You just know. That's a friend. Search for someone who can become that. Search for a friend. Someone you could talk to. Someone who will listen to you, who understands you, who values your opinion, and who understands the concept of compromise, which is what it's all about. How many times I have couples sitting in front of me battering away? I said, please, Vatranos, give in a little bit. Give in. Is it so important? My Rebbe Victor Miller said, how many wonderful guys had to get the last laugh in the fight, but today are eating Meal Mart frozen dinners in basement apartments? No, but I had to win. Was it worth it? Now you're living in the basement, eating frozen food? It's important. Now, is this a personality what you truly want? Are you comfortable with the person's personality when you date them? Look for someone who will bring out the best in you. Someone who will motivate you, who will encourage you. Besides getting married, we're here on a mission. Hashem sends us here on a mission to perform. Every one of us has a mission in this world. And will my spouse help me to become the best me? That's important. Will they motivate me? Will they be behind me? Will they have my back? Watch out for incongruent behavior, such as the person tells you one thing but does another. A girl came to me, a very nice frum girl, PA. She says to me, I like this guy, but I want to make sure that he learns, at least a little bit every day. So I brought him in. He said, you know what? She likes you. She's willing to give you a shot. Are you learning? I'll try. I'll take care of it. So he says, Rabbi, I'll take care of it. 3 weeks later, she tells me, I call him up. He's in bed every day. Incongruent behavior. Goodbye, Shidduch. Called off. Right? Done. Is he or she extremely sensitive and overly needy? That's hard if you're dealing with someone who has that kind of personality over a lifetime of 40, 50 years. Having someone pecking on your head is a little challenging. And will that get on your nerves? Is a person complimentary or critical? Simchat Chaim. Whoa, that's a huge one. I want to live with someone who sees the world as a glass half full, not half empty. Are they flexible or inflexible? That's important, because when girls come to me, I say, there are 3 critical things I want to teach you that are musts in a guy. If they don't have them, run. Kas, kamtan, kapdan. If the guy has anger issues, if he's cheap, he's inflexible, that's Gehenna. Any of them. Goodbye, out. Done. Look for maturity and responsibility. A mature person is willing to work at the marriage. Communication. Does he get you? Does he understand you? Is he flexible? And does he make big deals from small offenses? Here's a great story that I just saw recently. A guy just came home from the Mir, and he's getting ready to take his test for CPA. His best friend, Shui, is going to get married, and he's waiting for the invitation to come in. His parents get the invitation. His name's not on it. And he's like upset. Right? Why didn't he invite me? I can't believe it. I'm his good friend. Anyway, this happened about 10, 15 years ago. It was a famous day because it was a day that the Northeast all had a power grid outage. He was supposed to have a shidduch date that night, and he had to call it off because New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, the whole grid went out from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 5 o'clock the next morning. So he says to himself, I don't know, what should I do? Maybe I'll go to the wedding. It's in Marina Del Rey. Go with my parents, but I wasn't invited. It's not right. I'm upset. In the end, he says, invitation, I'm going to go. So he goes with his parents. Caterer was very intelligent because by the time they arrived there at Marina Del Rey, the caterer had taken all the tables out and set them out outside with candles because there was no, light. And the band as well is set out there, and they're getting ready to start the dancing, and something amazing happens. The lights go back on in Marina Del Rey, but nowhere else. Not in the Bronx. You can see, because Marina Del Rey, if you know where it's located, it's right at the pitch of the Bronx. Nothing else. Queens, there was a miracle. That one spot, Marina, that got the lights going on. And he was a phenomenal dancer. So they went back inside to do the dancing, but now there's no tables. So the dancing was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And he entertained the chassan and kala. And a great time. Shabbos chassan was going to be by his shul. So he runs into the chassan. The chassan says, I want to tell you that you made the evening for us. And I told my kala, thanks so much for making sure that you put his name on the invitation with the parents. She says, no, I never did that. And she says, I thought you were going to give him an invitation yourself, personal. He says, I never did that. So we came to the conclusion, you came even though we never sent you an invitation. We're so incredibly grateful to you. That's not making a big deal out of a small offense in life. That's important. Okay, watch out for avoiding behavior. If after dating for a while, he or she don't want to discuss family or reveal personal information, red flag, they have something to hide. What is it? We need to know. And listen, be very careful when the person is speaking, because you're there to glean information. It's a treasure hunt. I saw an interesting story. A girl was out on a boy with a date, shidduch date, and he tells her, he's trying to, sometimes guys want to show off a little bit. When I was in high school, I broke into the yeshiva kitchen all the time. What a great idea. I would do it again. Goodbye. Done. He just told us what his values are all about. It's okay to have that kind of, behavior in high school, but you don't feel bad about it? You're still acting, behaving that way? So listen intently when you're on a date. Because after a while, people can't fake you out. If you listen intently, they're just human beings. They're going to give in. Everything is observable. They can put on a show for a while, but given time, the real personality will usually emerge. Watch out, again, for people who have a terrible temper, who speak Lashon Hara, because how they treat other people is a direct correlation of how they'll treat you. What's his relation to money? If he's approached by a beggar on the street and he doesn't have, does he, dismiss him with contempt or say nicely, I don't have? Religious beliefs are too important of an area to explore. Does he or she preach one thing and do another? Do they have a lot less difference of expectation of religion that you want in your life? Be careful. I have a couple out west. She walks 3 miles to get to shul on Shabbos. He's playing tennis. 10 to 11, he gets into his car to catch Kiddush and come. They have the worst shalom bayis. Point is, police have been called in there a couple of times, not because of them so much, but because of the kids, but we spoke about it already before. You don't want a tremendous disparity when it comes to religious values. You should know a little bit about the person's education and job history, what his standard of living in mind is in terms of expectation. Is the person bright enough for you? Are they intuitive enough? Are they sharp enough? Again, lifestyle we spoke about already. Are you comfortable with each other's lifestyle? Kids, what's their opinion on having children? And do they like children? Are they comfortable around children? That's important. I'm mentoring a person, a professional on the Upper West Side. And I'm watching each date as it goes. After date number 4, she hits him with a bomb. She has an alcohol problem. I haven't decided yet how I'm dealing with that one. Figure it out over the next week. But, whoa. So things come up, have to be, and she's, doing therapy for that right now. How about the person's parents? Do they speak politely to each other? How do the parents treat their children? Last year, I did a podcast with David Lichtenstein on broken engagements. One of the girls that was on the show came to see me personally. And we're talking about parents. She went over there after the engagement to the guy's city. And the parents were disrespectful to each other, but what really hit home for her was there was a sibling who had autism. And the way the chassan to be was treating him. Get out of the room! You're embarrassing us! We don't want to hear it. And then when his mother gave her the Torah, she says, Ma, we heard that one already. Whoa! See you later. Goodbye engagement. You have to pay attention for a lot of these little things. Very subtle, but very important. Okay, let me close by giving you a formula. Sometimes people ask me, how do I know if I'm with the one? How do I know? You've dated long enough, but I need now a formula. It's very simple. It's called the PAIR formula, P-A-I-R. P, physical attraction. It doesn't mean seeing bells and whistles and all that. It means over the course of time, you can build a physical attraction. It can take up to sometimes 6, 7, 8 dates to get there. And often builds with great communication and being together. So let's say there's physical attraction. Next comes A, admiration. Is there something about the guy or the girl that you admire? In their values, in their character. A is also acceptance. No one has a perfect profile. Can you accept that person in spite of the fact there was some issues going on in adolescence or their teen years or a medical condition or problem in the family? That's a case-by-case basis, and I'm happy to help you there if I ever come up, just reach out to me. But then, can you accept the person for who they are in spite of the fact that there's something in their profile or their background or their family that's an issue? I, emotional intimacy. It's a deep sense of friendship that you develop. It comes after spending time together. You cannot develop emotional intimacy in 1 or 2 dates. That's why you need to date 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 times. You develop a bond together. It's a state of being that couples develop after spending time with each other. It means that you turn to each other for emotional support. You feel comfortable being with each other. You're happy to be the one that's their go-to for an answer or a solution. How do you build that? How do you build emotional intimacy? Very simple. There are a few ways. You value what you do on a date. Not every date is a dinner. Not every date are drinks in a lounge. Lounge is one, dinner, paint night, Dave and Buster's, axe throwing if that's your thing, museums if that's your thing. Change it up. You get to see different, aspects of the person. Try to have fun. As much as you'd like to get answers on your dates, it's not an inquisition. It's not an FBI, strip down. You're there to have fun and ask questions in a sort of friendly fashion. Make each day purposeful by trying to learn one thing new that you don't know about the person. Very important. After the shadchan has released it, in case we're the shadchan, try to talk together. It's very important to talk on the phone because that allows you to understand what life will be like when you eventually become husband and wife. That's important. And lastly, R, mutual respect. It's basic. There's no place whatsoever for disrespect in an Orthodox, from Jewish relationship. If there's any kind of disrespect and it's repeated, it should be that relationship should be basically annulled, and move on to the next one.